Excuse my voice, guys. It's a bit off. I've been sick for the past week. Bear with me on this. Number 1. A few years ago, I had a dog-sitting business with regular clients. One of those regular clients was a lady with a big house. There was a really long driveway leading up the house, and it was tucked far back from residential roads. It was somehow isolated while being in a dark residential neighborhood. No one could drive to the house without being noticed. No one could park on the adjacent streets. And it would be very unusual for anyone to be walking up to the house or through the yard without having already parked on the driveway. The last time I house sat, everything began as usual. I fed the dogs, gave them various meds, and played with them for a while watching movies. Best job ever. Eventually I got sleepy and went to bed in the master bedroom. This room has huge, beautiful windows with a view of the driveway, the only normal access point. That's what I like about the room. After browsing on my phone in bed, I turned everything off and was trying to go to sleep. As I'm laying there staring at the ceiling deep in thought, I'm snapped to total awareness. Nothing changed. No one came up the driveway. Everything was silent, and yet I suddenly started to feel very uneasy. The hair starts to stand up on the back of my neck. A voice in my head is urgently saying, "You're being watched. You're being watched. Someone is watching you." My heart rate starts to pick up. I've never experienced anything like this, and couldn't explain it in the least. I called my boyfriend immediately, grabbed my stuff, ran to my car, locked the doors, and sped out of the driveway. I glanced around the house while I was leaving and saw nothing. No one. When I got home, I checked every door to make sure it was locked, and I slept on the couch with a view of both entry points. The paranoia slowly dissipated, and I was eventually able to sleep. The next day, I returned in the morning and took care of the dogs. Meds, potty, breakfast, all of that. I started walking through the house toward the back, where the master bedroom is. Again, I started feeling really strange. Not a watched feeling this time, but a high alert sense that things were off. I began to notice the candy wrappers were out that weren't out the night before. Doors were open that I specifically closed to keep the dogs corralled. Things were moved. I left again and called my boyfriend to stay with me. I couldn't be there alone. Someone was absolutely in the house the night before. I wondered if maybe someone in the family stopped by, but I am always given a heads up with lots of warning before someone comes over. It's not too uncommon for the owner's son to stop by. He has my number and also gives me a heads up. I call the owner and tell her what I noticed. She tells me she'll call around and see if anyone had dropped by. She calls me back in under an hour and assures me that no one did. It must be that old ghost, she says and giggles. What a relief that she was taking my safety concerns so serious. I tell her I'm having my boyfriend come over just to be cautious. She doesn't mind. A few hours later, me and my boyfriend get to the house. He checks the downstairs. Absolutely never am I to go upstairs. He notices that everything is fine. We're hanging out for hours, playing with the dogs and watching movies. I left my boyfriend in the living room, walk past the front door, and I go to the bathroom around 10 p.m. I'm about to walk out to the bathroom, and the dogs start barking. As I'm walking back, I see my boyfriend standing in the entryway by the living room. He's focused on the front door and tense like I've never seen him. Again, the hair stands up on the back of my neck. He quickly ducks to the side of the front door. Before I can finish asking what's going on, he tells me, "Shh, someone's out there." He approaches the door and looks out, but the person's gone. I rush over to him and explains that he was sitting on the floor in the living room when the dog started barking at the front door. My boyfriend goes over toward the door and sees a black figure peeking into the window and then walk off. When I looked out, no one was there anymore. I'm absolutely terrified, so I text the son to make sure again that it wasn't him. Short aside. A few weeks prior, He asked me to go to a wedding with him, and I gently replied, my boyfriend wouldn't think that was appropriate. So when I asked him if he had stopped by the house, he replied, my girlfriend doesn't think it's appropriate that you're texting me so late. I apologized and I told him I had a safety concern and that it was important. I told him what my boyfriend saw. He simply responded that he didn't stop by. At that point, we were done for the night. We put the dogs in their kennels, waited a little bit, and ran to my car. The next day, I very quickly took care of the dogs in the morning and left before the owner got back. I've never felt such a deep electric sense of imminent danger like I did that night. That was just too much. When the owner asked me back a few months later, though I desperately needed the money, I politely declined. Story number 2. I met a guy on Tinder, and we really started to hit it off. We've been chatting for a few weeks, and even discovered we had a few mutual friends. I was pretty intoxicated one night, was feeling very social, and decided to call an Uber to his place. Once I got there, we talked outside for a while, and ended up vibing even better in person. I opened up to him about my health problems, and he opened up to me about his older sister, who had passed away from a similar condition to mine. I was curious about his sister, but I definitely wasn't going to pry. We walked into his house and it smelled like 1,000 dead rats were rotting under the floorboard. I was still pretty drunk, so I tried to forgive it because, hey, sometimes animals die under a house or on the walls, and there's nothing you can really do about it. I started to look around, and the whole house looks like a cluttered storage unit. He takes me to his room, which is seemingly normal, kind of feminine, but that's cool, and we hook up. I ended up falling asleep there and woke up around 10 a.m. to the stench of death. I opened my eyes, feeling very sober, start to look around the room. I noticed that only girls' clothes were hung in his closet. I start to assume I have possibly been cheated with. Then I see a giant black binder on his nightstand. When he woke up, I decided to jokingly ask him, "What's in that giant binder?" Turns out it was every single episode of Golden Girls printed out. He said he read it at work, and it's the only show he'll ever watch. I asked him what he did for work, and he dodged the question. I sat up and looked at the pillow I'd been cozily sleeping on. It had no pillowcase and was covered in what looked like old blood. It looked like the blood had been coughed onto it. I started putting the unpleasant pieces together. I asked as sensitively as I could, "Hey, was this your sister's room?" I noticed the clothes in the very visible closet. He says, "Yeah, and this is her bed. I haven't changed or washed anything. It makes me feel better to be in her bed. This is where I held her when she died, and you remind me a lot of her. I really like you." And then casually tried to hook up with me, like he didn't just drop unsettling news. I felt immensely sorry for him, but needed to get out of there. I made some excuse and left. I decided to not entirely ghost him because of how bad I felt for him. He was clearly dealing with some dark shit. We kept in contact for a few weeks until I went on my Find My Friends app and noticed that he had clearly taken my phone while I was asleep that night and shared my location with himself. I called him and went off. This was not the first rodeo with a stalker type, and I was not dealing with it. He told me he couldn't believe I thought he would do that I'm being a really terrible person by dumping him because his cat had recently died. I blocked him. After he said that about his cat, combined with his tendency to hold on to things, it really makes me wonder what that smell actually was. Let's hope not. And though I hope you get help, let's not meet again. Edit. I found out from a mutual friend that his sister had passed away around 10 years prior to this event. Story number 3. This story begins with a plain evening scrolling through Tinder and swiping right on people I found interesting or cute. One of the matches I got started immediately talking to me. This person was fairly good looking, and I mean he seemed normal at first. He happened to go to the same university as I did. He was an engineering student, and I was a designer student, and we had the same campus. We hadn't met before. We were talking a lot that evening. I was bored, so I had time to talk with him. I found out he also went to the same gym as I did, which was a school gym at our campus. I was surprised I didn't recognize him, since the gym was small, and usually you start recognizing people there. The next day he messaged me, and I didn't notice the message right away. So he had messaged me twice during 2 hours. I didn't think much of this at the time, but now I realize they were the first signs of him being a bit pushy. Well, you'll understand later. I just thought that maybe he was a bit too excited to talk to me. The day was a bit busy for me, so I couldn't message him as actively as the day before. He seemed a bit bummed about that, but I thought everything was still fine. Some days went by. Suddenly I get a message from him complimenting my ass at the gym. First of all, I didn't see him at the gym, or maybe I didn't recognize him. Obviously, I was a bit weirded out by this, and I really didn't know what to say. For him, my replies didn't seem good enough, because I didn't like his message. He kept the weird messages going on and started saying inappropriate stuff, like maybe tomorrow you could squat and I could watch you. In my mind, this normal guy just suddenly turned into the weirdo that I wasn't sure what the behavior was. I told him I didn't appreciate his behavior. His replies started getting more and more passive-aggressive, and he just kept saying that he wanted to meet me and was really pushy about it. I had enough and just deleted him as a match because I found him so weird. A year goes by, maybe even more than a year. I don't remember exactly, but I remember the moment when I got a random message on WhatsApp from an unknown number. It was a plain hello with some emojis. I replied to the person asking who it was. Said his name, but at first I didn't realize that this person was the same creepy guy from over a year ago on Tinder. I asked him where he got my number, and he claimed that I'd shared my number with him on Tinder. Like what? I don't share my phone number that easily, so no way. I stopped replying to him because I also recognized him from his profile picture, and I realized that this guy was a creep talking to me over a year ago. I screenshotted the conversation and creep's photo to my friends, basically shared my feelings on how weirded out I was. Well, it went even creepier. One of my friends in the group conversation is a rape victim. She recognized the person. The creepy dude from Tinder was the one who raped her, and now he was talking to me. So in conclusion, my good friend's rapist searched my number, tried to lie about the way he got it, and was talking to me after being rejected a year ago. I was so scared and creeped out by this that I told my father. I gave his number to my father and basically haven't heard from this creep ever again. I think my dad told him to back off, but I'm not sure how and in what way he did. I don't care. I'm just glad a fucking creepy rapist isn't trying to approach me anymore. I switched gyms after this incident and also happened to graduate. Thank God. I'm not sure I would recognize him on the street or in person at all. I'm just so glad I never met him. So yeah, anything can happen. You could match your friend's rapist one day. Everyone be careful. Thanks for sticking with me through this video. I know my voice is not up to par and may not be very pleasant, but I still wanted to get a video uploaded this week for you guys. Please be sure to leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe for more content. Until we meet again, stay sinful.